Hi, I'm Mark Pachowicz, and this is Artifacts in Accounting. My rhetorical situation is going into tax or audit, in which I will be analyzing two artifacts. So, like I said, my rhetorical situation is a graduate student starting to be a full-time accountant, and it is actually one of the hardest decisions that an accounting student has to make in their lifetime because the problem with it is that most students don't actually learn or know the difference until they're in the field. This is just a brief overview of what I will be going over in my analysis of the artifacts in the situation. Um, so my text-based artifact is a news article written by Caitlin Grime, and she has her CPA, which is Certified Public Accountant, and then she is also a manager at Crow Shields Bailey PC. My non-text-based artifact is an interview in which I conducted with Michael Weber. He also has his CPA, and he is an auditor at Deloitte. So for my text-based artifact, I chose a news article by Caitlin Grime, and the title of this article is Accounting Students, Should You Choose Tax or Audit? So obviously it's for accounting students. And the excerpt that I chose to analyze is this right that you see on the page. And it says, while both are accounting professions, the tax and audit paths can vary greatly. In the tax division, your day will focus on trying to reduce a client's tax liability. Meanwhile, the purpose of an audit is to express an opinion as to whether the financial statements of a company are free from material misstatement. As such, auditors devise testing measures and scopes to evaluate the information provided by the client in order to express an opinion. Additionally, auditors may also work on other forms of attestation engagements, such as reviews and compilations, which provide limited to no assurance regarding the financial statements. So the reason I chose this excerpt is because it shows how she's knowledgeable in both topics, and she can kind of describe both of them in a detailed manner. And so the rhetorical terms that I'm going to be using to analyze this excerpt is author, audience, context, purpose, logos, and ethos. So the first two terms that I'm going to be analyzing are author and audience. The author is obviously Caitlin Grime, and the audience is students going into accounting and having trouble picking which part of accounting they want to base their entire career around. As I said before, it's one of the hardest decisions of accounting students' lives because they don't know what they're getting into and what they're basing their entire career around. And so Miss Grime tries to make it easier for them by telling what each part of accounting does, tax and audit. The next two terms also go together. So the context of the article is that she's been working in accounting for a while, and she's explaining the difference between tax and audit in terms of salary as well as like what they actually do. And in the excerpt, she explains what they do differently. And so this purpose of writing the article is to help students going into the field know the difference between tax and audit, so that they're not lost once they get into the field. Logos is the facts and reasoning behind the information. And so she explains that tax is reducing the client's tax liabilities, and audit is giving an opinion on a client's financial statements to make sure that they are free of misstatement. Ethos is the credibility of the author, and so she is the manager at her accounting firm, and she is also a CPA, and she's gone through the same process, so she knows exactly what these kids are dealing with. The next artifact I'll be analyzing is the non-text-based artifact, which is an interview with Mr. Weber. The interview was originally 50 minutes long, so this is a clip of 2.5 minutes. And the terms that I will be using to analyze this are context, purpose, exigence, medium, logos, pathos, and ethos. Here's the clip. I apologize for the background noise as it was over Zoom, so there was not much I could do with recording it. The question that I asked him was, between tax and audit, who has a higher chance of moving up and being promoted in the workplace?
Everyone that I've talked to in audit has experienced the same thing in terms of audit is very time-based,
Okay.
where you work for a certain amount of time and you get promoted, assuming your performance is meets a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
People have gotten promoted early, but in general, I think that that's extremely rare, and there's a lot of things outside of your control that have to happen in order to do that.
Okay.
So regardless of what you do, you can do everything right. That doesn't mean that you'll necessarily be able to do that. And then I'll also say that in general, and it's not very much, I would honestly argue it's not even, if someone was considering it too, I wouldn't even include this as a consideration, but tax does tend to pay slightly more. When I say slightly, I mean maybe a couple $1,000s.
Okay.
And that's mainly due to the fact that it's more niche. When you come out of audit, because again, most people don't stay in public accounting for that long.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come out of audit, there's a very broad range of things you can do. Whereas coming out of tax, you're most likely going to be taking another tax-related role. So just pivoting to tax real quick now. From what I've heard, it's similar in tax in terms of that time structure to get promoted.
Okay.
But what I will say is that, if you're on a smaller team where you're able to not necessarily stand out more, but carry more of the work yourself. Because for example, if there's 3 people on your team and one leaves, all of a sudden that's a ton of work that you're either going to have to do or you're going to have to bring someone else in.
Yeah.
So, you might have a better opportunity of being able to show that you're capable of doing more in that scenario versus if you're on a team of auditors where it's 10 people and one person leaves, the work will probably just get absorbed for a while until they find someone to replace that person.
Okay.
So in that case, I guess there's potentially room for faster growth, but I've never seen anyone get promoted in tax at an accelerated rate.
The way I'll be analyzing this is explaining how each term relates to the interview. So the first one is exigence. And the exigence of this is that I met Mr. Weber at a Deloitte drop-in and wanted to learn more about the company. So I was asking him questions, in which leads to the context of this. We became friends, and I started asking him more and more questions. I eventually asked him if he wanted to be interviewed for a project and for me just to learn more about accounting in general. So the interview was conducted through the online Zoom meeting, which is the medium, and the audience is accounting students like me. The question that was asked in the clip is who has a better chance of being promoted or moving up in the workplace, and his answer was, audit is time-based to be promoted, so is tax. However, tax pays a little higher, and smaller teams in tax can make you stand out. However, there is no accelerated rate of promotion in neither tax or audit. Now, the reasoning behind this is because he's been working in Deloitte for multiple years and he knows the system, and he's seen how many people get promoted and move on to different jobs. His credibility is that he works at Deloitte, which is a Big Four accounting firm. Just like Ms. Grime, he is also a CPA, a certified public accountant, and he has many connections that he can and has referenced from in the firm, as well as friends that he has known to get promotions and move on to different companies. The interview allows him to express his feelings and emotions through his tone, and his voice is also able to engage the audience more, which is all pathos. So the final comparison. The similarities are that both artifacts have constraints. Now, these could be biased from experience or from preference. This means that they either prefer tax or audit over the other, or that they've experienced tax or audit being better than the other. One of the main differences between the two artifacts is that there's no pathos in the article, simply because the article is fact-based and it is not made to engage the emotions of the audience. To wrap things up, the rhetorical situation was an accounting student graduating and not knowing if they want to go into tax or audit. Both of the authors of the artifacts are credible because they've worked at accounting firms for multiple years, as well as having their CPA. Knowing the differences can hopefully help a student know which path they want to take. Thank you for watching.